Paramount Plus just dropped one of the best comedy specials of the year with South Park Not Suitable for Children, and you can stream it right now for free on us when you try Paramount Plus for 30 days with the code BUTTERS. Not only do you get to experience this wonderful special, but you also get to experience a mountain of backlogs from childhood nostalgic movies and television shows, live TV, more exclusive content, and more. Click the links in the show notes below to check it out and start streaming. For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today we're jumping into Rebel Moon, Part 1, A Child of Fire. Rebel Moon tells the story of a young farmer, not trying to jump into spoilers, who equips a resistance of fighters to basically take down the motherland, aka Galaxy, big bad, big villain. It is hard to not compare this movie to Star Wars, especially considering the fact that if you know anything about this project, you know that this initially started out as a pitch for Lucasfilm by Zack Snyder. They shut it down and he went, changed a few things, sold it to Netflix. Here we are. I'm going to put this disclaimer up front. This is the first of a two-part story. The second part drops in April. Basically, my plan for this is to review these films individually and then kind of talk about the story as a whole. And I will say, though, with this being the first of a two-part story, this does not have a good foundation to lay its roots on. Don't get me wrong, this movie feels very much like a Zack Snyder film, equipped with all of his signature mannerisms that include slow motion, wide shots, very beautiful cinematography, and really good world building. But honestly, I feel like that's kind of a little bit misplaced here. I think sometimes it feels like they're focusing a little bit too much on the latter with the world building aspect, rather than actually telling a good story. And it's not to say that I walked away from this movie not curious about what happens next, because I very much am so, and I really like Snyder as a director. I really feel like with Snyder in particular, he's one of the more polarizing directors making movies today. You either really love him or you really hate him. I really like him as a storyteller. I loved Army of the Dead last year. I really liked all of his stuff that he did with the DCEU. Watchmen, Dawn of the Dead, those kind of things. But I feel like with Rebel Moon, this is probably not only his worst film to date, but it had so much potential and it just falls so flat. Like, how does a world this epic feel this boring? I love how big this world feels and how cinematic this world feels. It's kind of both a crime and not a crime that this movie got just a straight streaming release, because I would have loved to see this movie on the big screen, but also knowing the quality of it, I'm glad that it went straight to streaming. And I think sometimes with a world this vast, you have to really pick your battles. Do I develop the world or do I develop the characters? And sometimes it takes a master storyteller to really do both. And normally, I think Snyder really does a great job at world building, and he fails at both here. There is not one character in this entire film that is almost pushing a 2.5 hour mark that feels like there's any kind of connection to, anything that you're really rooting for. Like, even the reason and their motivation for wanting to go to war with the motherland and start this rebellion in the first place feels like it's done in passing. This movie does so much to kind of build up the rebellion. It fails to actually give you motivation for why the rebellion is even created in the first place. I will say, among this large cast of characters, I will have to say Ray Fisher definitely has the best moments in this movie for me. I think Ed Skrein makes a great villain in this movie. He's the reason that I wanted to keep watching. Aside from the visuals, there's literally nothing to kind of hold on to or hold your attention, because this movie just kind of feels in every way like a weirder version of Star Wars. Like, when I say that this movie makes weird decisions, that's not something I'm saying in light. Like, there are very weird narrative decisions and very unique character things that wouldn't belong in a Star Wars film, and just kind of feel very strange to even be placed here at Rebel Moon. The pacing of this movie is like a snail's pace, and I get it. It's the first of a two-part series, but even looking at the upcoming release of Dune Part 2, the first Dune at least had me engaged. It had me mesmerized by the visuals on the screen and really clinging and wanting to know more about the world and what happens next. And I feel the complete opposite here with Rebel Moon. I felt like there was nothing for me to cling on to. I thought the world and the character designs were cool, but outside of that, there's nothing that I'm like, man, like, there are sequences that I really loved. There are things that I want to talk about, but the majority of this movie just feels forgettable. If this is the movie that he pitched to Netflix, I completely understand why they passed. With that said, let's run this through the Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give Rebel Moon, A Child of Fire Part 1 a 1.5 out of 5, and it's even getting that simply for the visuals and a few of the actors. This movie was long, it was boring, it felt forgettable, it felt uninspired. Like, I don't know how this movie ended up this way. I feel like every advertisement I saw for this movie just made it seem like it was going to be this really grand epic and this generation's version of Star Wars, and it is so far from that. If you guys have seen Part 1, and what did you guys think? Comment below and let me know. Did you guys hate it? Did you love it? Are you dreading the second one? Are you curious about the second one? Are you just gonna over it? Comment below and let me know. Let's talk about mental health in the meantime. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. One of the very prominent themes in Rebel Moon is the theme of redemption, and I think that's probably one of the best things that this film got right on a thematic level. But it also really speaks volumes to the subject of identity. I think sometimes when we feel like we have done wrong, or when we have fallen short, or we feel like we're broken because we're depressed, we have an addiction problem, we feel the need for suicide or the desire for suicide. A lot of it is just saying, this is who I am now, this is my identity, I'm too far gone, there's no redemption for me. And that's not true, because you're not your worst day, you're not your depression, you are not your addiction, you're not your suicidal desire, you are so much more than that. Sometimes breaking that process of clinging to those negative emotions as identity and the separation is one of the hardest things that you ever have to do. But I promise you, redemption is a beautiful, messy thing that we all need to take more time to do. As someone that has struggled in the past with addiction, as someone who's struggled in the past with depression, and also my own struggles of redemption, it is one of the hardest things that you can ever endure. And I'm speaking that from personal experience, but also at the same time, I am here today to let you know that it is one of the most rewarding things and experiences that you can go through. And so sometimes it is literally just as simple as opening up the text message app and sending 741-741 a text message, which is the suicide lifeline, or calling 988, or checking our mental health resource in the show notes below. Sometimes just reaching out and just asking for help, as hard as it may be, is the start of that redemption process. And it's a beautiful thing. It's going to be a painful thing, but I promise you its rewards are plentiful. I hope that was an encouragement to anyone that is currently watching this. Again, one of the hardest things about this time of year is the very things that I just talked about: identity, family, so on and so forth. But hang in there. Stay with us. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, is now streaming on Netflix. If you guys have seen it, let me know what you guys thought. Am I alone in my hatred for this movie? But alternatively, in the show notes below, not only will you find links to our mental health resource library, you also find links to our Patreon, the previously mentioned Paramount Plus link to try the service for 30 days for free with code BUTTERS. Also, you guys will find links to all of our social media, more movie reviews like this, our podcast network, and that subscribe button. So until next time, happy holidays. We'll see you guys in the new year.